This is our final training section in the buyer training module. And in this one, we're going to go over the closing. After all of the contingencies in the New Jersey contract of sale have been met, the title company, along with the mortgage company, will communicate to issue a clear to close. Once the clear to close is issued, there's going to be a closing date and time that will be scheduled. And you're going to have to communicate with the buyer, their attorney, and the title company in order to make sure that date is good for everybody. If your buyer is also selling a home that is going to coincide with the one that they're buying, just make sure that they understand both transactions have to coincide with each other if they're going to happen on the same day. So just make sure you're in communication with all of that. Once the closing date and time is already scheduled, then you're going to let the buyer know that they have to make plans to visit the property with you, the agent. You're going to accompany them to the property on the day of closing, usually about an hour or two before the scheduled closing time, to conduct a final walkthrough. Okay, we're going to get into more on what needs to be done during the final walkthrough shortly. And then also, you're going to want to make sure that your commission statement is filled out, signed, and submitted to the title company. Also, once the clear to close has been issued, the title company is going to issue a closing disclosure. And this is required to go out a minimum of 3 days before the closing date. And you want to instruct your buyer to review the closing disclosure for accuracy. And if they have any questions, I would suggest that you talk to them about the questions and then have them talk to the title company for more clarification and understanding on them. Also, you want to make sure you check the commission section on the closing disclosure to make sure that the amount is accurate and is in line with what you submitted on your commission statement. Sometimes the title company or the people filling out this disclosure will make a mistake, and if you don't double check it, it might go unnoticed, and you don't want to be at the closing and then they have to make adjustments last minute. So it's better to review this before you get there and then inform them of anything ahead of time so they can adjust it and correct it. Our commission statement is located under the library and brokerment under the buyer section. And this is just a snapshot of what the top part of it looks like. So on the date, you're going to put the date of the closing there. You're going to put the property address that's being sold next to the property. And then on seller, you're going to put the seller's names. And then near buyer, you're going to put the buyer's names. You have to fill this out for every closing that you have. And the way you fill it out is by going into brokerment. The next slide is going to show the second, not really the second section, but I had to break it up into two pieces since it didn't all fit on one slide. But the commission bill is one page, and I'm just going to show you the next part of that page on the next slide now. As you can see here, the listing agency, that will be the name of the listing brokerage. The selling agency will be the name of the brokerage that's representing the buyer. And then the price will be the sales price of the property. The commission that is due Avalon Real Estate Group will go on the commission due line. So you're going to calculate the commission and then write the number out there. So if it's 13,000, you're just going to write 13,000 on that line. Signed, you're going to put your signature there. Even though it says Avalon Real Estate Group at the bottom, you're signing on behalf of us. You're the agent, so the agent signature goes on the signature line. So getting back to the final walkthrough, when you do the final walkthrough, you want to make sure that the property is in the same condition that the buyer previously viewed it in. I have included a checklist in here that is pretty thorough. You don't have to go through every single thing, but if you can, that's great. And it's recommended that you do so that you don't miss anything. So if you click on that link in the slide, you'll be able to get to the checklist. That'll show you all the different items that you should look at with the buyer to make sure that there's no problems. I mean, some of the most important things that you want to check are going to be including leaks, any damage from moving out of the property. And also, even though you're going to get receipts for any repair work that's been done, or invoices or whatever, it might be wise just to view any of the sections where the repair work was done. Just to double check. That's all. So again, take a look at the checklist that I have the link here for, and that'll give you a full comprehensive view of items that you should be taking a look at during your final walkthrough. After the final walkthrough is complete, you're going to want to communicate with the listing agent that you're going to be taking the keys with you to the closing. And actually, this should be done before you go to the final walkthrough. Just send them a message and say that you want to make sure it's okay for you to take the key out of the lockbox once the final walkthrough is done, so you can take it to closing and provide it to the buyer after the closing is complete. Most times that's fine. Other times maybe the seller's attorney has the keys and they'll bring it with them. But again, there's usually a key in the lockbox so you can get into the property. So 99% of the time, there's going to be a key in the lockbox. You could take that after the final walkthrough. You could take that to the closing. When the walkthrough is complete, you're going to lock up the house, and then you're going to go to the closing location with the buyer. If there were any issues that came about during the final walkthrough, you want to take pictures and then email the pictures to the buyer's attorney first. And if necessary, you can also email them to the listing agent and the seller. But first, talk to the buyer about it. Email them to their attorney. And then, depending on what their attorney says, you can either talk to the other agent or just let their attorney handle it. Any issues that come about from this that aren't major and will cause your buyer not to want to buy it anymore can usually be worked out through a form of a credit that's issued from the seller, depending on what everybody agrees to. When you get to the closing, the buyer will start to sign the required documents, and then the title company will start to do everything that is required in order to get the transaction funded, meaning getting the loan into their account and then getting the proceeds distributed out to everybody. The sellers may or may not attend the closing. Sometimes sellers that live out of state, or if they've moved already, they most likely will not attend, and they'll have the documents pre-signed, and they'll be there ready for the buyer to sign. At this point, your job as an agent is pretty much done. So just be happy and be patient while the buyer signs their portion of the closing documents. Once all the signing is complete and the funding is completed, the title company will issue everyone's check, and then you'll provide the keys to the buyer, assuming that you have them. When you take your check from the title company, make sure that it includes a copy of the settlement statement and or closing disclosure. Sometimes they issue closing disclosure. Make sure you have a copy of one of those. We need that to process the check. If we don't have that, we can't process your check. So make sure you take that with you when you get your check. So after the closing is completed and you have your check and settlement statement, you want to make sure you upload that copy to the transaction checklist in Brokerman. So you're going to scan it in, upload it, and also make sure your transaction checklist is complete. Make sure all the buyer documents are in there. Make sure everything's signed. And then you're going to submit the transaction for review in Brokerman and drop off your check along with the original settlement statement at our office. If there's any issues that come up with the paperwork for the transaction, we're not going to issue the commission payment until they're resolved. For example, missing paperwork or incomplete signatures on some of the paperwork. We need everything completed. We cannot issue a payment until everything is complete. So it's very important. Keep all your paperwork in order so that you get paid quickly. And then you also, if you want to congratulate your clients, and ask them for a positive review. Assuming it was a good transaction and they enjoyed you, one of the things you could do is say, would you mind doing a video review for me? And you can film them with your phone giving a review. If they're not comfortable doing that, they can do an online review on a social media page that you might have, or a website, or your Google business page. If you have one, they can leave a review there. Or Realtor.com. Any profiles that you have on any of the real estate websites, they can leave a review on that. Make sure you also keep in touch with your clients after everything is done and you moved on. Make sure you keep in touch with your clients through the Sphere of Influence marketing campaign, because If they ever decide to sell in the future, you want to be the one that they talk to about that. So at this point, you should understand everything that has to be done before, during, and after the closing. And again, it's very important that you make sure all your required transaction paperwork is complete and the settlement statement is uploaded to Brokerment. And do not forget to submit the transaction for review and drop your check off at our office. Okay, that's very important. The longer you take with that, it's the longer it takes for you to get paid. So don't hesitate on that, and make sure everything is correct and accurate so we can process it quickly. That's pretty much it for the buyer training. We're gonna, after this, you can proceed to the next training module, which will get started with listings and working with sellers. So thanks again, and reach out to me with any questions that you have.